Economics. 1. What does a high incremental capital output ratio (ICOR) indicate? Ans. A high ICOR indicates that more capital is required to produce one additional unit of output, reflecting lower efficiency of investment. 2. What is capital in economics? Ans. Capital is financial wealth or physical assets used to start and maintain production or business activities. 3. What are the two essential components of capital formation? Ans. Savings and investment. 4. What is economic growth? Ans. Economic growth is a quantitative increase in the output of goods and services. 5. What is economic development? Ans. Economic development is a qualitative improvement in living standards along with economic growth. 6. Does economic development always include economic growth? Ans. Yes, economic development includes economic growth. 7. What is the Global Gender Gap Index? Ans. An index introduced by the World Economic Forum in 2006 to measure gender-based disparities. 8. What are the 4 dimensions of the Global Gender Gap Index? Ans. Economic participation, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. 9. What is the Global Hunger Index? G. Ans. An index that measures hunger levels across countries. 10. Which organizations publish the Global Hunger Index? Ans. Concern Worldwide and Welthungerhilfe. 11. What are the 4 indicators used in the Global Hunger Index? Ans. Undernourishment, child wasting, child stunting, and under 5 mortality. 12. What is financial inclusion? Ans. Access to affordable financial services such as banking, credit, insurance, and pensions. 13. What is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana? Ans. A flagship scheme launched to promote financial inclusion. 14. What is demographic transition? Ans. The shift from high birth and death rates to low birth and death rates as a country develops. 15. Who proposed the Malthusian theory of population? Ans. Thomas Robert Malthus. 16. What does the Malthusian theory state? Ans. Population tends to grow faster than food resources. 17. How are birth rate and death rate expressed? Ans. Per 1000 population per year. 18. What is fertility rate? Ans. The average number of children born to a woman during her reproductive years, 15 to 49 years. 19. What is infant mortality rate IMR? Ans. Number of deaths of infants below 1 year of age per 1000 live births. 20. What is maternal mortality ratio MMR? Ans. Number of maternal deaths per 100,000 live births within 42 days of termination of pregnancy. 21. What is sex ratio? Ans. Number of females per 1000 males. 22. What is dependency ratio? Ans. The ratio of dependent population to the working age population, 15 to 64 years. 23. Why do females generally outnumber males in older age groups? Ans. Because females generally have higher life expectancy. 24. What is the Multidimensional Poverty Index MPI? Ans. An index measuring poverty across health, education, and living standards. 25. Which index did MPI replace? Ans. Human Poverty Index HPI in 2010. 26. What are the 3 dimensions of the Human Development Index HDI? Ans. Health, life expectancy, education, and income. 27. Which method is used to calculate HDI? Ans. Geometric mean. 28. What is gross domestic product GDP? Ans. The total value of final goods and services produced within a country during a given period. 29. What is net domestic product NDP? Ans. GDP minus depreciation. 30. What is gross national product GNP? Ans. The total value of final goods and services produced by a country's residents. 31. What is market price? Ans. Factor cost plus indirect taxes minus subsidies. 32. What is factor cost? Ans. The cost of production at the producer level excluding taxes and including subsidies. 33. What is a base year? Ans. A reference year used to calculate constant price estimates. 34. What are the characteristics of a good base year? Ans. It should be a normal year with minimal fluctuations, reliable data, and recent relevance. 35. Which country has one of the highest life expectancies in the world? Ans. Japan. 36. What is a poverty line? Ans. The minimum income or consumption level required to meet basic needs. 37. What is the expenditure approach formula for GDP? Ans. GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. 38. Which organization compiles India's national income estimates? Ans. National Statistical Office under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation. 39. Where is the headquarters of the National Statistical Office located? Ans. New Delhi. 40. What is the current base year used for India's GDP calculations? Ans. 2011-12. 41. What was the previous base year before 2011-12? Ans. 2004-05. 42. What was the calorie norm used by the Lagdawala Committee for Poverty Estimation? Ans. 2,400 calories per person per day in rural areas and 2,100 calories in urban areas. 43. How did the Tendulkar Committee estimate poverty? Ans. By using consumption expenditure and cost of living rather than calorie norms alone. 1. What was the role of the National Development Council NDC? Ans. The National Development Council approved 5-year plans and reviewed national development policies. 2. What was the nature of the National Development Council? Ans. It was a non-constitutional and non-statutory body. 3. Who chaired the National Development Council? Ans. The Prime Minister of India. 4. Was the chairman of the Finance Commission a member of the National Development Council? Ans. No. The chairman of the Finance Commission was not a regular member of the NDC. 5. Which 5-year plan emphasized heavy industries? Ans. The second 5-year plan. 6. Who formulated the strategy of the second 5-year plan? Ans. P.C. Mahalanobis. 7. What was the main focus of the fourth 5-year plan? Ans. Growth with stability and progressive achievement of self-reliance, including import substitution. 8. Which government introduced the first version of the sixth 5-year plan? Ans. The Janata Party government. 9. What was the main emphasis of the sixth 5-year plan, 1980-85? Ans. Poverty alleviation, modernization, and infrastructure development. 10. What was the core theme of the 8th 5-year plan? Ans. Human development. 11. What was the theme of the 11th 5-year plan? Ans. Faster and more inclusive growth. 12. What was the theme of the 12th 5-year plan? Ans. Faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. 13. What are the 4 major objectives of India's planning process? Ans. Growth, modernization, self-reliance, and social justice equity. 14. What was the immediate trigger for economic reforms in 1991? Ans. The balance of payments BOP crisis. 15. What does LPG stand for in the context of economic reforms? Ans. Liberalization, privatization, and globalization. 16. What does liberalization mean? Ans. Reduction of government controls and abolition of industrial licensing. 17. What is deregulation of the industrial sector? Ans. Removal of licensing and other restrictive controls on industries. 18. What was the purpose of financial sector reforms? Ans. To make the financial system more efficient and market-oriented under the regulation of the Reserve Bank of India. 19. What was the purpose of tax reforms in 1991? Ans. To simplify the tax structure and improve compliance. 20. What was the purpose of foreign exchange reforms? Ans. To devalue the rupee and move toward market-determined exchange rates. 21. What was the purpose of trade policy reforms? Ans. To remove import-export licensing and promote exports and foreign investment. 22. What is inflation? Ans. A sustained increase in the general price level, reducing the purchasing power of money. 23. What is deflation? Ans. A sustained decrease in the general price level, increasing the purchasing power of money. 24. What is disinflation? Ans. A decline in the rate of inflation. 25. Which index was traditionally used to measure inflation in India? Ans. Wholesale Price Index WPI. 26. Which index is now the principal measure of retail inflation in India? Ans. Consumer Price Index CPI combined. 27. Which organization compiles the CPI for industrial workers CPIIW? Ans. Labor Bureau. 28. Who generally benefits from inflation? Ans. Debtors. 29. What are the two main tools used to control inflation? Ans. Government fiscal policy and RBI's monetary policy. 30. What are the three major groups in the WPI basket? Ans. Primary articles, fuel and power, and manufactured products. 31. Which group has the highest weight in the WPI basket? Ans. Manufactured products. 32. Which group has the highest weight in CPI? Ans. Food and beverages. 33. How frequently are WPI and CPI released in India? Ans. Both are released monthly. 34. What is headline inflation? Ans. Inflation based on the overall price index, including all items. 35. What is core inflation? Ans. Inflation excluding volatile food and fuel prices. 36. What is a stock market meltdown? Ans. A sudden and sharp fall in stock prices. 37. What is an economic slowdown? Ans. A decline in the rate of economic growth. 38. What is recession? Ans. A significant decline in economic activity, commonly defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. 39. What is depression? Ans. A severe and prolonged recession, often associated with a GDP decline of more than 10%. 40. What is economic recovery? Ans. A sustained rise in output and economic activity following a slowdown or recession. 41. What does GIAS stand for? Ans. Globally Important Agricultural Heritage Systems. 42. What is the aim of GIAS? Ans. To identify and safeguard eco-friendly traditional agricultural systems and associated biodiversity. 1. What are the basic factors of production? Ans. Land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship organization. 2. What are the key agricultural inputs besides the factors of production? Ans. Seeds, irrigation, fertilizer, and pesticide. 3. What is minimum support price MSP? Ans. A guaranteed price announced by the government to protect farmers against sharp falls in market prices. 4. Who recommends MSP? Ans. Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices CACP. 5. Who approves MSP? Ans. Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs CCEA. 6. When is MSP announced? Ans. Before the sowing season. 7. What is procurement price? Ans. The price at which the government purchases food grains from farmers. 8. What is issue price? Ans. The price at which food grains are supplied by the central government to states under the Public Distribution System PDS. 9. What is fair and remunerative price FRP? Ans. The minimum price that sugar mills must pay to sugarcane farmers. 10. Which body recommends FRP for sugarcane? Ans. Commission for Agricultural Costs and Prices CACP. 11. Which crops are not covered under MSP? Ans. Tea, coffee, fruits, and vegetables. 12. Which ministry implements the National Food Security Mission NFSM? Ans. Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. 13. When was the National Food Security Mission launched? Ans. 2007. 14. What is the objective of the National Food Security Mission? Ans. To increase production of rice, wheat, pulses, and other key crops. 15. What is the disadvantage of MSP? Ans. It can encourage crop concentration and create inflationary pressures. 16. What is the Essential Commodities Act (ECA)? Ans. A central law empowering the government to regulate production, supply, and stock limits of essential commodities. 17. Which state is the largest producer of sugarcane in India? Ans. Uttar Pradesh. 18. What is the National Food Security Act 2013 coverage in rural areas? Ans. Up to 75% of the rural population. 19. What is the NFSA coverage in urban areas? Ans. Up to 50% of the urban population. 20. How much food grain is provided to priority households under NFSA? Ans. 5 kilograms per person per month. 21. How much food grain is provided to Antyodaya Anna Yojana households? Ans. 35 kilograms per household per month. 22. What maternity benefit is provided under NFSA? Ans. At least 6,000 rupees to pregnant women and lactating mothers. 23. Who is normally considered the head of household for ration cards under NFSA? Ans. The eldest woman aged 18 years or above. 24. What does PMFBY stand for? Ans. Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. 25. What risks are covered under PMFBY? Ans. Yield losses, prevented sowing, post-harvest losses, and localized calamities. 26. What is the farmer premium for Kharif crops under PMFBY? Ans. 2% of the sum insured. 27. What is the farmer premium for Rabi crops under PMFBY? Ans. 1.5% of the sum insured. 28. What is the farmer premium for commercial and horticultural crops under PMFBY? Ans. 5% of the sum insured. 29. Are crop losses due to wild animal attacks covered under PMFBY? Ans. Coverage depends on state notification. 30. What are millets? Ans. Hardy, rain-fed cereals requiring relatively low water and commonly grown by small and marginal farmers. 31. What is a trap crop? Ans. A crop planted to attract insect pests away from the main crop. 32. What is drip irrigation? Ans. A micro-irrigation system that delivers water directly to plant roots and reduces salinity and water loss. 33. Which major agricultural commodity does India heavily import? Ans. Edible oils. 34. What is seed replacement rate SRR? Ans. The percentage of crop area sown using certified or quality seeds instead of farm-saved seeds. 35. What does GURT stand for? Ans. Genetic use restriction technology. 36. Water terminator seeds. Ans. Seeds engineered to produce sterile plants, preventing farmers from reusing harvested seeds. 37. What is neem-coated urea? Ans. Urea coated with neem to slow nitrogen release and improve nutrient use efficiency. 38. What does GIAS stand for? Ans. Globally Important Agricultural Heritage Systems. 39. Who launched the GIAS initiative? Ans. Food and Agriculture Organization FAO. 40. What is the objective of GIAS? Ans. To identify, recognize, and conserve eco-friendly traditional agricultural systems and associated biodiversity. 1. What is money supply? Uns. Money supply is the total quantity of money held by the public in an economy. 2. Who creates demand and supply in the economy? Uns. Demand is generated by consumers, while supply is generated by producers. 3. Who controls inflation through monetary policy in India? Uns. Reserve Bank of India (RBI). 4. Who controls inflation through fiscal policy? Uns. The Government of India. 5. When was the RBI Act 1934 amended to introduce inflation targeting? Uns. May 2016. 6. What is India's inflation target under the flexible inflation targeting framework? Uns. 4% with a tolerance band of plus or minus 2%. 7. Which index is used for inflation targeting in India? Uns. Consumer Price Index (CPI) combined. 8. What is the Monetary Policy Committee (MPC)? Uns. A 6-member committee that decides the policy repo rate. 9. How many members are there in the MPC? Uns. 6 members. 10. How many MPC members are nominated by the RBI? Uns. 3, including the RBI governor. 11. How many MPC members are appointed by the central government? Uns. 3 external members. 12. What is the tenure of external MPC members? Uns. 4 years. 13. How often does the MPC meet? Uns. At least 4 times a year, currently 6 scheduled meetings annually, roughly every 2 months. 14. What are the 2 broad categories of monetary policy tools? Uns. Quantitative tools and qualitative, selective tools. 15. What is a demand deposit? Uns. Deposits withdrawable on demand, such as current and savings accounts. 16. What is a time deposit? Uns. Deposits with a fixed maturity, such as fixed deposits and recurring deposits. 17. Which is more liquid, demand deposits or time deposits? Uns. Demand deposits. 18. What is bank spread? Uns. The difference between the interest rate charged on loans and the interest rate paid on deposits. 19. What does CRR stand for? Uns. Cash reserve ratio. 20. Where is CRR maintained? Uns. With the Reserve Bank of India in the form of cash balances. 21. What does SLR stand for? Uns. Statutory liquidity ratio. 22. Where is SLR maintained? Uns. By banks themselves in the form of cash, gold, and approved government securities. 23. Can banks earn interest on part of their SLR holdings? Uns. Yes, when SLR is maintained through government securities. 24. What is the Gini coefficient? Uns. A measure of income inequality ranging from 0, perfect equality, to 1, perfect inequality. 25. What is the repo rate? Uns. The rate at which RBI lends short-term funds to commercial banks against government securities. 26. What is the bank rate? Uns. The rate at which RBI lends to commercial banks for longer-term purposes without a repurchase agreement. 27. What is the Liquidity Adjustment Facility (LAF)? Uns. A framework through which RBI manages short-term liquidity using repo and reverse repo operations. 28. What is the LAF corridor? Uns. The interest rate corridor defined by the repo rate and standing facilities around it. 29. What is the Marginal Standing Facility (MSF)? Uns. An overnight borrowing facility for scheduled commercial banks from RBI. 30. How much can banks borrow under MSF? Uns. Up to a specified percentage of their net demand and time liabilities (NDTL) as prescribed by RBI. 31. At what rate is MSF generally available? Uns. Usually at a rate above the repo rate. 32. What is Open Market Operation (OMO)? Uns. RBI's outright purchase or sale of government securities to manage liquidity. 33. What are qualitative or selective credit controls? Uns. Measures such as margin requirements, credit rationing, and moral suasion to regulate credit to specific sectors. 34. What happens when the government borrows from the public and commercial banks? Uns. It can reduce liquidity available to the private sector, crowding out. 35. What happens when the RBI injects liquidity into the banking system? Uns. Money supply increases. 36. What is priority sector lending (PSL)? Uns. Mandatory lending by banks to sectors such as agriculture, MSMEs, education, housing, and weaker sections. 37. Which sectors are included under PSL? Uns. Agriculture, MSMEs, education, housing, export credit, and other priority sectors. 38. Where do domestic banks contribute if they fail to meet PSL targets? Uns. Rural Infrastructure Development Fund (RIDF), managed by National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development. 39. Where do foreign banks with fewer than 20 branches contribute if they fail to meet PSL targets? Uns. Small Industries Development Bank of India (SIDBI), managed funds such as the Small Enterprise Development Fund. 1. What is loan to value (LTV) ratio? Uns. The ratio of the loan amount to the value of the collateral offered. 2. What does a high LTV ratio indicate? Uns. Lower down payment by the borrower and higher loan exposure. 3. What is contractionary tight monetary policy? Uns. A policy that reduces money supply and raises interest rates to control inflation. 4. What is expansionary easy monetary policy? Uns. A policy that increases money supply and lowers interest rates to stimulate growth. 5. Which act governs the Reserve Bank of India? Uns. The RBI Act, 1934. 6. Where was the RBI originally established? Uns. Kolkata, then Calcutta. 7. Where is the RBI headquarters located now? Uns. Mumbai. 8. When was the RBI nationalized? Uns. 1949. 9. What is the tenure of nominated directors of RBI's Central Board? Uns. 4 years. 10. Who heads the RBI? Uns. The governor. 11. How many deputy governors are there in RBI? Uns. 4. 12. What is the Financial Stability and Development Council (FSDC)? Uns. A non-statutory apex body for macro-prudential supervision and inter-regulatory coordination. 13. Is FSDC a regulatory authority? Uns. No, it is a coordinating body, not a regulator. 14. When was Industrial Credit and Investment Corporation of India (ICICI) established? Uns. 1955. 15. When was Industrial Development Bank of India (IDBI) established? Uns. 1964. 16. When was National Bank for Agriculture and Rural Development (NABARD) established? Uns. 1982. 17. Which institution promoted Small Industries Development Bank of India (SIDBI)? Uns. IDBI. 18. Where is SIDBI headquartered? Uns. Lucknow. 19. Where is National Housing Bank headquartered? Uns. New Delhi. 20. What is National Payments Corporation of India (NPCI)? Uns. A not-for-profit company that operates retail payment and settlement systems in India. 21. Which payment systems were developed by NPCI? Uns. RuPay, Unified Payments Interface (UPI), and FASTag. 22. What is the Quality Council of India (QCI)? Uns. An autonomous body under the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade (DPIIT). 23. Which industry bodies promoted QCI? Uns. Confederation of Indian Industry (KI), Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry (FICCI), and Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India. Assocham. 24. What is the District Mineral Foundation, DMF? ANS, a non-profit trust established by state governments to benefit persons and areas affected by mining. 25. What does IDA stand for in the World Bank Group? ANS, International Development Association. 26. Which World Bank institution lends to governments on market terms? ANS, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD. 27. Which World Bank institution finances the private sector? ANS, International Finance Corporation, IFC. 28. Which World Bank institution provides political risk insurance? ANS, Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, MIGA. 29. Which institution published the Ease of Doing Business report? ANS, World Bank. 30. Which institution publishes the Global Financial Stability Report? ANS, International Monetary Fund, IMF. 31. Which institution publishes the Global Gender Gap Index? ANS, World Economic Forum. 32. When was the IMF established? ANS, 1945, following the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944. 33. What exchange rate system was promoted after the collapse of Bretton Woods? ANS, a system of floating exchange rates. 34. What is the International Monetary and Financial Committee, IMFC? ANS, an advisory body of the IMF Board of Governors. 35. What is the New Development Bank? ANS, a development bank established by BRICS countries. 36. Where is the New Development Bank headquartered? ANS, Shanghai. 37. Which WTO agreement protects geographical indications, GES? ANS, the Agreement on Trade-related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, TRIPS. 38. Which WTO agreement classifies agricultural subsidies into amber, blue, and green boxes? ANS, the Agreement on Agriculture, AOA. 39. What does the green box represent in WTO subsidies? ANS, permitted subsidies with minimal trade distorting effects. 40. What does the amber box represent in WTO subsidies? ANS, trade distorting subsidies subject to reduction commitments. 41. What does the blue box represent in WTO subsidies? ANS, subsidies linked to production limiting programs and exempt from reduction commitments.